We talking rom-com, we talking action, we talking drama and movie classics. Whatever you want, yo, we have it, 'cause we talking movies on the podcast. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. Hey honey, I just want to talk about the movie like casually. You don't have to bring up the cinematography. Honestly, let's just talk about like how the characters were fun. Married a film critic. So I married a film critic.
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. I'm your co-host, Julia.
And I'm Barry the Film Critic with a lower voice than usual. Sorry, folks, allergies. I'm not trying to sound more like E.T. than I normally do, but that's Elliot.
Well, you just gave away the film that we're talking about this week. We're talking about...
Was it a mystery? Surprise!
We're talking about Steven Spielberg's E.T. from 1982.
Steven Spielberg brings us E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial. We will witness the arrival, the search, the desertion, the fear, the discovery, the friendship.
I'm keeping him.
The secret, the love, the warning, the signal, the mystery, the danger, the intrusion, the wonderment, the enchantment, the hope. The connection has been made. Universal Pictures presents Steven Spielberg's E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial.
You were 2 years old when this film came out.
That's true. You weren't much older.
I was 5. I saw it when it came out, opening weekend. I saw it a lot. The following year, Return of the Jedi came out, and I know I saw this movie and Return of the Jedi more times than any other film. There was a point where my father, would offer to take my brother and I, for the weekend or to do something fun, and I'd be like, Barry, do you want to go to the park or do you want to go E.T.? I saw this so many times. I mean, this movie came out in '82. I remember seeing it in '85, like back to back with Back to the Future. It didn't come out on video cassette till '87, so it played in theaters for years. And
It played in theaters for 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, this is until Jurassic Park showed up in 1993.
Wow.
This was the top grossing film of all time. It made over $300 million, and this is when movie tickets were like $1.50. So I mean, think about that.
Wow.
How much money this thing made. I mean, it was like to just jump to it. I mean, this thing, it's not just a movie that touched the zeitgeist. I mean, this film was like a religion. People all over the world loved this film, embraced this movie. I mean, it was pretty intense, and I was all about this religion of E.T. the Extraterrestrial. I had the bed sheets, I had all the books, I had the action figures. My favorite was an E.T. shaped eraser that I used to always use. But I'd always go do it from the feet, because if you do it in the head, you erase the head, and the head, melts. So you want to do from the feet up. You understand. So, yeah, I mean, this movie was a really big deal.
Wow.
And it still is.
I don't remember the first time I saw this movie.
You don't even care.
No, I didn't grow up in a movie-loving family like you did. So I think also being so young at the time, I mean, who's going to take their 2-year-old to see E.T.?
Cool parents.
I guess. Not my parents.
Do you remember the first movie you saw in the theater?
No.
Wow. Because it's like, man, that's interesting. Because, yeah, that's a big deal to me.
I don't remember that at all.
Do you remember the first memory of seeing something in a theater?
No.
Interesting.
I don't have any of those kinds of memories.
Do you think your parents ever took you to the movies, or they're just like, nah?
When I was older, but my mom, we'd say, Mom, can we go to a movie? We're in I don't know, junior high or high school or something. and we had to be in the theater an hour ahead of time before it started because she wanted a good seat. And I just remember the popcorn was gone, the candy was gone, and we're still sitting there. And I'm like, Mom, why do we always have to get here so early?
That is something I love about my mother-in-law. Listeners, this is my mother-in-law, Dawn, and what I love about her, I have so many memories of going to the movies with her, just being in a theater where there's like nobody there.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I can't wait to see this movie, which starts in 90 minutes.
I know. She's so funny.
She's still that way. It's
she's
amazing.
Had to get there so early. And then, contrast that with your mom, who would get there in the middle of the movie.
Yes, I have many. We'll get back to E.T., folks. But what my mom used to do is, we'd get to sometimes we'd get in like 20 minutes into the movie. So we'd watch, we wouldn't it'd be like, what is this film about? And we'd watch all the way through. But then it would end and she'd ask the usher, hey, we missed the first 20 minutes. Would it be okay if we stay and watch the first 20 minutes in this next showtime and leave? And they always said yes, because my mom is, this sweet little lady. So I think they're like, okay, lady. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, my memories of like Forrest Gump and Philadelphia and the Joy Luck Club are so screwy. I couldn't even tell you how these movies begin because I remember vividly like watching them from the midpoint.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that just shows our audience how different,
how screwy our movie-going experiences are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't remember when I first saw this movie. I think last night when we watched it together, maybe I'd seen it only one other time.
Yeah, and it wasn't with me because, we've been married 17 years at this point. And, I've never watched it with you.
Yeah.
Because it's come up a few times and you just never showed any interest in it. And honestly, like when we watched it together the other night, I did sit apart from you. I'd normally sit next to you and, rub your feet and all the other husbandly things. But I didn't last night because I didn't want you to see how hard I was crying.
Oh, you were crying
the whole time.
I didn't even
This
know.
movie is like looking through a family album for me. It's an intense experience for me to watch this film.
God.
I mean, you said it yourself. The little boy looks just like me, and he does.
Yeah, he looks just like you when you were a kid.
I didn't really even connect to that when I was, when I was seeing this movie as a kid. But now it's like, Henry Thomas, it looked just like him, and he's raised by a single mother. I was, for the most part, in my childhood, raised by a single mother along with my brother. I grew up in a suburb. Even before I lived where I live now, I was living on the East Coast, and we had a suburb that was just like this movie. We were always riding our bikes around, and there's a scene in this movie, not to get too far into it, but there's a scene where Elliot is showing E.T. all of his toys and showing him his world, and that scene always just moves me so much because, for one thing, those are all my toys. I recognize every one of them, and it's like there's something special about that relationship. It's like, of course, this movie touched everybody in the world. Who doesn't want a friend like E.T.?
Yeah, I mean, he does have really creepily long fingers. So I think that would have scared me the most.
Sure. We should probably, before we get too far into it, I guess we'll talk about what the film is, and we'll be able to have a little bit of build up to the trailer.
Yeah, why don't you just give a little synopsis?
Elliot is a middle child. He has an older brother whose name I can never remember. He's played by Robert McNaughton. I can never remember the character's name. And his little sister Gertie, I love that, Gertrude, is played by Drew Barrymore. And they're being raised by their mother Mary. The father has recently left. It's a constant reminder that he is in Mexico with some new chick. So there is a bit of sadness going on in the family. And randomly, this little extraterrestrial, this little alien, who they name E.T., appears, and it becomes this journey not only of Elliot. It becomes a journey because he and E.T. are psychically connected, which is established in a really subtle way. But it becomes about getting E.T. home because E.T. is not there, as a.
Well, he gets left by mistake.
Yes, he's with a crew of little blobby people like him, and they've taken off. So E.T. is alone. He is millions of miles away from home, and Elliot is his only hope.
Yeah. So, I did not remember barely any scenes from this movie. It was like seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, and I suspected, it had to be, because I remember we were watching the opening scene, you're like, I don't remember any of this. I mean, for me, the opening scene is so important because I remember vividly as a kid watching the opening credits, and the John Williams music is scary at first. It sounds like a horror film. It's very ominous and spooky. And then you've got there's no dialogue for the first 10 minutes or so of the movie, which I think is incredible. it's just visual storytelling. You see the spaceship landing. We see that the spaceship is run on, mushrooms. It's weird. The technology inside of it. It's like it's like being inside a glass, greenhouse. And, E.T. is by himself. You see how he's just dwarfed by these trees. It's a really beautiful long shot. And then suddenly the big bad shows up, and and I love it. They never give a name. It's not like, deep state or whatever, or even like
scientists or,
exactly. Yeah, we
or
don't,
the CIA. Yeah, you
we don't really know.
know.
It's a very nice poetic touch. There's one who has a pair of jangling keys. He's identified in the end credits as Keys, played by Peter Coyote. We don't see this character for most of the movie, only from the waist down. And we basically see these guys, they chase after E.T. through the forest. It's this thrilling.
And he can run fast.
I don't know if he's running.
I don't think he's running.
Yeah.
He looks like
he's floating.
Yeah.
I think he's teleporting, floating, however.
Yeah.
But because he's got this beautiful red heart light, to quote Mr. Neil Diamond. And he's, he wrote that song for the movie, right?
No.
Turn on your heart light.
Wow, I didn't know
He saw
that.
E.T. and wrote that song. Yeah.
Wow.
If that isn't
I
the
am
corniest thing
learning
you've ever
so
heard.
much.
Well, that's why I'm a professional film critic,
Oh
because you
my
could learn
gosh.
such valuable film
Wow,
history like
okay,
that.
keep going.
Anyway, all right, this wordless sequence again, I love it because no dialogue. It's just Spielberg at the top of his game. It's interesting now that with his last few movies like Lincoln and War Horse, Spielberg has he's trying to do like classic style of filmmaking. He's trying to be like whatever John Ford or Alfred Hitchcock. This movie, it's like this is back when Steven Spielberg was an auteur. Like this was a style of filmmaking that he
created.
Yes, he's obviously pulling from some of the masters, but the way this movie looks, the way every scene looks like an illustration from a child's fairy tale. Mm-hmm. That amazing shot where Elliot is about to go into the shed outside and the moon is out and the clouds are there. It looks like an illustration out of Peter Pan, which comes up again as a plot thread in this movie. And of course Spielberg, maker of Hook, obviously that story meant so much to him, and because flying has a great deal in this story too, so there is a real Peter Pan connection. But it's an extraordinary sequence. Because if you think about this movie, there's dialogue, but there's really not that much dialogue. Little Henry Thomas, who plays Elliot, he has some really beautiful monologues, but for the most part, you could watch this movie, you wouldn't want to, but you could watch it without the sound and follow everything. It's pretty, to use that term, pure cinema. It is, because it's the imagery is so powerful and so direct. You don't need a lot of exposition, which is why you don't need to know who the scientists are, how long they've been trailing E.T., what their deal is. We know that they're an invasive presence in a really scary way. They drive around trying to listen to all the different suburban homes.
Oh, yeah.
So they're, clearly they're not great people. Clearly they're well connected. It's established that there's like a general, it's obviously very militarized, but there's not a whole lot beyond that, and you don't really need it. You just need to know that they are a threatening adult presence. And they're not really great scientists, because there is that weird shot of remember the Reese's Pieces that he finds in the park one night, and he just pops one in his mouth. That's not good science, folks. That could have.
Wow.
If he knew that was like from an extraterrestrial, you shouldn't pop that in your mouth. For Pete's sake.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about the dinner scene.
Which one?
The famous dinner scene with just like Mary and the three kids.
Yeah.
And this is before E.T. shows up.
Right before, yeah.
Right before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember. It just shows how much of a mom I am now, because when Elliot says, like, shut up to his brother, mm-hmm. and uses a very odd...
You could say it.
Yeah, he just says, shut up, penis breath.
Yeah.
And the mom is just like, Elliot, but like laughing. I just thought it was so funny because I could picture myself in her position just being like, okay, that's highly inappropriate and highly funny,
Yeah.
And I just thought it was a really funny scene, because then the older brother, is like kind of making fun of Elliot, and Gertie's just like repeating everything that he's saying in just this really funny way. He just really establishes who all of these people are. That Elliot is like, no, I saw this thing. I don't know what it is, but it's real. It's not in my imagination, and nobody believes him. And your heart just really goes out to him.
What are you going as for Halloween? I'm not going to stupid Halloween.
Why don't you go as a goblin?
Shut up.
It's not that we don't believe you, honey.
Well, it was real, I swear.
What are you going as, Gert?
I'm going as a cowgirl. So, what else is new?
Maybe it was an iguana.
It was no iguana.
Maybe you know how they say there are alligators in the sewers?
Alligators in the sewers.
All we're trying to say is maybe you just probably imagined it.
I
It
couldn't have
happened.
imagined it.
Maybe it was a pervert or deformed kid or
A
something.
deformed kid.
Maybe an elf or a leprechaun.
It was nothing like that, penis breath.
Elliot! Sit down.
Dad would believe me.
Maybe you ought to call your father and tell him about it.
I can't. He's in Mexico with Sally.
And then, they bring up the whole dad thing. The dad, he says, well, dad's in Mexico, and it's just really obvious that everyone's hurting over that situation.
And the movie doesn't need to over-explain it. We don't need flashbacks.
Oh, yeah, no.
None of that. It's
in
great.
like a few minutes, you have a full idea of this family dynamic.
And if the characters aren't particularly, rich in the way they're, characterized, nevertheless, like, the performances, not only do they feel completely authentic, but there's a lived-in quality to everything. The way these kids are acting, they're not acting like cutesy sitcom actors. And Dee Wallace, who is wonderful in this movie as the mother. I mean, again, it's like, I don't want to say it's like a documentary quality to it, but I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like,
it feels very authentic.
Very real. I've never doubted the reality of this film, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And we'll get to it. There's some parts in this film that are a bit much at times in terms of how elevated the reality is. But nevertheless, like, I've always believed in this movie, which is one of the reasons, even as a kid, it's like it felt authentic in a way that Star Wars never did.
Yeah, definitely. So seeing E.T. again, like the actual puppet, I was just struck by how not lifelike it is, but just how like sweet he looks. I think the first time I saw it, I thought he was scarier, and watching him now, you're like, oh yeah, it is just kind of a blobby kind of, I don't even know. He's just very unique looking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a Hormel ham connected to a long neck that's connected to a beanbag. There's really not much to the design. But it's funny. Like, it's a quality a lot of Disney movies have, where the character that you find the most beautiful and endearing are the ones with the big eyes, the big expressive eyes that always get you. And E.T. is very much like that. It's all about the eyes. And it's pretty amazing. It was something I hadn't noticed until last night. I've seen this movie how many times. His eyes dilate at times.
Yeah.
When there's the light fixture. I mean, it's pretty
amazing.
uncanny. This is, there's no CGI when this came out. So this is I mean, this is some pretty advanced puppetry.
And I know that this is supposed to be a sci-fi movie, but it's really funny. There's a lot of funny parts, when Elliot shows his siblings E.T. and they are like, E.T. yells, and then Gertie screams, and then everyone's yelling. And they dress him up, and they put him in robes, and they put him in wigs, and it's just very sweet.
Did you find that the humor kind of helped draw you into the film more than it would normally?
Yeah, definitely. Because I thought it was very real. It reminded me because my sister and I would dress up my brother in like a girl and put him in just costumes and stuff from our dress up box and parade him around the neighborhood. And sorry, Tim.
Scarred for life.
Yeah, but that's something that kids do,
Right.
And so I found it very real, but also very endearing. And I just love every time E.T. is in the closet. It's just funny. You know, he's in there with the stuffed animals. He looks like a stuffed animal. The mom never notices him. The mom is in another world here. She's
an adult,
Yeah.
She's obviously just, traumatized by the absence of the husband, whatever the circumstance is. We don't know what she does, do we?
No, we don't know what she does, but we know she has a job where she has to dress professionally.
Yeah. If I were to guess, I'd say travel agent. Because this is that time before Priceline.com where if you wanted to take
travel agent?
Yeah, if you wanted to take a trip, you had to get a travel agent. You don't do it yourself.
She obviously doesn't have to be at work before 9. It's kind of a 9 to 5 thing.
Yeah.
But when she comes home after E.T. has been drinking.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about that.
Yeah, we need to talk about this crazy scene.
But yeah, to your point, yeah, it's the joke is that she just does not see him, and Gertie is trying so hard to tell, look, mommy, this is what he's saying, this is what he's doing.
Yeah.
And she just, and it's kind of the magic of it too, because Elliot at one point addresses his siblings and says, only kids can see him.
So do you think she literally can't see him?
No.
No.
No. I'm not trying to take that, but I do think there is. To go with the whole Peter Pan element, how, Peter Pan, Never Land, other than the pirates, Never Land is a place for children. And because this movie is about the perspective of children, it's one of these things where, only children could believe in him, and only children could see his, his innocence and his beauty and all that, whereas adults, obviously, they want to...
They're like, let's dissect
yes,
him.
let's, light the torches and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the scene... I guess this is where we establish that they do have a psychic connection.
Yes, it happens the night before when he brings E.T. into his room, and they're both mimicking each other. That really cool scene.
Oh, yeah.
That's how it kind of starts. But then, yeah, you're right. The following day, when Elliot fakes a sickness, which I love, and I've done that, and it always works when you put the thermometer up to the heating lamp. Oh, I've done that. It actually works. So,
wow.
It's okay. My mother's never going to listen to this. So. So he stays home with E.T. for they stay home together, and they have this
for a day.
Yes.
But then the next day,
Elliot goes to school and E.T. stays home, and they're clearly, one would feel something, the other would feel it, and the film is showing us this back and forth happening, and then it becomes really extreme when Elliot's in school. E.T. finds a 6-pack of beer.
Finds all the beer and just decides to drink all of it. E.T. keeps drinking the beer, and Elliot just keeps
drunker and drunker.
getting and then the school calls his mom.
Well, let's go. It gets even crazier because it's a science class.
Oh, right.
And this is like old school science where you murder a frog before dissecting him in a science class.
Right.
Because it's the 80s. And
don't they still do that stuff? Don't they still do dissections?
I did it once in high school, and this was in the 90s, and the frogs were already dead.
Okay, let me tell you how lame my school was.
Okay.
Not only were the frogs already dead, but they had probably been dissected multiple times, and so they just kept reusing them.
It's so disgusting.
Yeah. So they were already, so we basically just we're like, oh, okay, this frog's already open, and we just look at all the organs and then put it away for the next time.
That's so gross.
Yeah.
So it's like looking at a carved Thanksgiving Day turkey. It's like...
Yeah. So we didn't even get to really dissect them. It was, I don't know how much it costs a school to get new frogs every year, but I don't know. And this was clearly like a budget saving the decision.
You have any pre-dissected frogs?
No, it's like they got them, and then the first class got to actually dissect them, but then the next year and the year after that and the year after that.
That's awful. So they just put them back in the formaldehyde?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Okay, so they have live frogs, and the teacher's just going around giving them formaldehyde, chloroform
in cotton balls to put in the little jars.
Yeah, and it's just the frogs will go to sleep.
Yeah.
And their hearts will start beating.
Sure they will, yeah.
And then we'll cut them open.
Cut them open and see what makes them tick.
Well, yeah, and I'm like, oh, wow. Then what happens to Elliot? He just...
Well, it's interesting because he's looking at the frog in the jar, and obviously he's thinking...
and he's talking to it.
He's talking to it. He's thinking of E.T. It's this whole... It's a... it's kind of a precursor for where the film is going, because he's afraid if adults get a hold of him, they're going to do what they're about to do to the frogs. So he lets the frogs go.
He's like, be free.
He frees the frogs.
I mean, and this is, we're talking like 50 frogs or something.
Right. It's
an outrageous number. Like, I don't even think there's that many kids in this class. And the frogs, it looks like
a horror
a
film.
plague has just like descended on this class.
It's pretty, it's probably the most over-directed scene in the film, because it's a lot of, I don't know. Spielberg sometimes, when it comes to comedy, he tends to overdo it. He did a film called 1941.
Doesn't he kiss his classmate?
Well, I was about to get to that, because E.T. is at home watching The Quiet Man. It's the scene in The Quiet Man where, two characters suddenly have this passionate kiss. So, Henry...
so now it's making sense.
Yeah, because E.T.'s watching it at home. And Elliot's doing the exact same thing in class. Yeah, and so he grabs Erica Leniak, as you do, and you kiss her passionately. And the touch that's a little overdone is, a lot of moments in this sequence are overdone, but as Elliot's being taken away to the principal's office, which he totally deserves, there's a close-up of Erica Leniak's feet. Did you notice that? How her little tip goes up in the air, like, it's... very much Spielberg, like going, I've seen a lot of movies. Yes, we know you have, Mr. Spielberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then his mom gets a call and she's like, oh, he's drunk?
And by the way, this is, I know this, on the one hand, this is neither here nor there. I think it's interesting. What originally happened was it cut to this scene where you see him in the principal's office. The principal was played by Harrison Ford. You can find this scene on YouTube. It's worth a look, and it's fascinating because Ford's doing a character performance. He's not playing Harrison Ford, and he's doing this really twerpy voice. You never see his face. You just see his hands, and he's like a darkened. It's almost like a Peanuts wah 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 kind of figure.
I don't know.
You say you don't know why you did these things.
But I'm sorry. I'll never do them again.
I see you fine young people from good homes, every advantage, your whole life laid out in front of you. And I see the pot, the pills, the angel wings. Sure. It's a cruel world out there. Deceit, treachery. I wouldn't lie to you, son. See, you're in a way your own best friend or your own worst enemy.
And it's a cool scene, but they cut it, and it's a good thing they cut it. It would have taken the movie out of whack. But anyway, that's originally what happened next. And you can check it out on YouTube. It's a cool scene.
Harrison Ford on the cutting room floor of
Yeah.
E.T.
Can you believe that? Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so that makes sense. I understood that E.T. was drinking and that Elliot was getting drunk, but all the other things I did not put two and two together, that they were all connected.
Exactly. Yeah, they're all completely connected. And while this is happening, E.T. is not only, knocking down some brewskis, but he's also coming up with a plan of how to contact the spaceship that left it at home. And so he's putting together, the speak and spell and all the different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the scene that we talked about where the mother, it just does not see this little blobby creature in her kitchen, and she goes to fetch her son. Later on that night, it's one of the most beautiful scenes in the movie. Mary, the mother's name, Mary is reading Peter Pan to Gertie.
Yeah.
Excuse me, and E.T. and Elliot are listening to it. Elliot picks up a blade, cuts himself, and E.T. establishes very quickly he has the power to heal.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. They just have a very sweet relationship, and I don't think I ever really thought about that before. And you've always said that I don't get like coming of age boy movies because I'm a girl, I guess.
It's not, and it's not fair. You know why I said that? Because I showed you Stand By Me, and you had no reaction to it.
Oh.
And I think I was like, how could you not be moved by Stand By Me?
I think for me, it's not that I'm a girl. I think I think that some of these movies I was just too young to really appreciate.
And and forgive me, like I think I said that just because we watched Stand By Me. It's like it's because there's no girls in this movie. That's why you didn't like it. There's no girls.
Yeah, you're like, there's no girls in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so whenever like we watched it, and you're like, there's a girl in it, like you should like it.
Which is so uncool. I'm so glad we're talking about this now while we're recording this. Yeah.
No, but the truth is, I think some of these things didn't really move me until I got older. You know, we talked about that with the movie Before Sunrise, and I think now, like being a mom, kind of, it just hits you differently.
Yes.
Yeah, like watching things from a kid's perspective and having a kid, and you know, you're trying to understand your own child, and then you're watching these movies where, you know, the adults are the ones who can't hear things, can't see things, they don't understand, and then you're like, oh, is that me? Like, am I becoming that person? That I don't like understand, I don't see things, because children just have a way of looking at the world that is not just pure or innocent, but just they're not colored by cynicism. You know, like they now, and some, forgive me, I know some kids have been through a lot of trauma, but for kids that just have just, you know, they're just like growing up, a normal family, and they're just like going to school or, you know, doing their thing. Maybe there's a little bit of like benign neglect in the home, you know, they're just like in their own world, I guess. And parents, you know, we're just distracted with bills and jobs and, you know, chores and the laundry and whatever else, the other 500 things that we have going on. And kids just see things for what they are. Like they kind of see things just more plainly. And, you know, Elliot said something like, he's my friend. Like he just sees E.T. as his friend. Whereas adults are just like, what the, okay, where did he come from? What's going on? We need to figure this out. You know, there's all these like extra things that cloud our vision. And yeah, so I just think there is something true about the heart of a child being, I don't know, just special, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, we're recording this on the day that our daughter just turned 5 years old, and, you know, she says stuff all the time, or sometimes I try to, like, really lean into that. Like, what did you mean by that? Because that's interesting. And, you know, sometimes, you know, she's, you know, sometimes words fail her, so she's just saying what it is she thinks she can do to express the thing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes she's speaking very poetically, and it's poetic because it's so simple and direct.
Yeah.
And sometimes we miss that stuff. And the movie is about that.
It's a little bit of like time travel, like going back in time, not just to the 80s, but just to like when we were kids.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, it's that way for me, especially because, I mean, you know, my brother and I used to get on our bikes and just go all day.
Oh yeah, me and my best friend, we
vanish.
rode our bikes everywhere. And we, you know, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't like check in with mom every 5 minutes. I mean, my mom like basically knew where we were, and we weren't like in another town or anything. But yeah, like I can't imagine doing that today.
Well, it's funny too, because on the one hand I talk about it with such wonder. I'm like, oh, it was so great when I used to just like get on my bike and be like, yeah, mom, we'll be back before dinner. You know, it's like 2 hours, and I've got my little Swatch watch. I'm like, okay, it's 4:15, so I'm just gonna go as far outside of my town as I can, you know, and hopefully my tires won't pop. And I say that, you know, like, oh, it was so great. I mean, I don't want my daughter doing that. You know, as soon as Beatrice is old and, you know, old enough, you know, older to have like a cell phone, like you call me, you let me know you're okay. Obviously, it's a different world.
The flip phone we're gonna get her, because she won't be allowed to have a smartphone.
I'll give her my flip phone from 2003. Yeah, okay. That's exactly it. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's, you know, it's funny too, because you know, it's like, oh, the 80s were more innocent time. No, they weren't. Things were screwed up and scary in the 80s.
We just didn't have the internet, so we didn't know.
Well, you know, we had Neighborhood Watch. I mean, we had McGruff the crime dog, and I was certainly told, like, you know, Halloween candy, make sure there's no razor blades. I mean, there was all that stuff that was scary as frick when I was a kid too. It's not like this just happened like the last few years. Like the internet came. No. I mean, people were always weird and scary to kids. And there is an element of that to this movie, how adults are kind of, unreliable. They are hypocritical. They're scary. They're a threatening presence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just like the kids riding their bikes trying to get away from the cops, near the end.
Well, let's not get too far ahead. I mean, we should talk about how, one of the signature scenes of the film where Elliot and E.T., because E.T. has a plan and he has a technology that he's invented. Right. So there's the bicycle ride.
Yeah, yeah. And that he's trying to get basically to a spot where he can phone home.
Right.
Yeah, and Elliot's riding his bike and he says, "Oh, we're probably going to have to walk the rest of the way." But no, now they're flying. Yeah. Yeah, it is really magical.
It is. Yeah. It is. I mean, you said that, use that word. I mean, watching this movie for me, it's like watching The Wizard of Oz, and it's because of scenes like that. Yeah. And I understand how special effects work, but I look at the special effects in this movie, and I don't really question. Again, it's like I don't question anything about this movie, and I should, but I don't. I really don't.
I don't even.
It really works for me. I believe it.
Yeah, it does work.
So it becomes a little tragic at times because on the one hand, E.T. does make a connection, but then there is this portion, it's the darker portion of the film where Elliot is missing, and it was this whole ruse to get out of the house during Halloween, but now it's the next day, and Elliot's this missing child. There's a really, really beautifully acted scene where the mother is explaining to the cop about where her son is, and the brother and sister are by her side. Elliot just shows up. And, the mother does this. I love what Dee Wallace-Stone does, where she, basically is like, "Don't ever do that again." But, she's also so relieved to see him. And Elliot, in a really heartfelt way, pleads with his brother, like, "Where is he?
You have to find E.T.
You have to find E.T. because you don't know where he is."
Okay, this scene where he finds E.T. in the river is the only mental image I had of this movie.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
No wonder you never wanted to watch this film. You thought it was like about this dead alien that a raccoon was like looking at. There's a raccoon in this scene, folks. I forget about that.
I know. Well, it's just because it's so heartbreaking and tragic, and he's like white as a ghost laying in this water, and you think, "Oh, that's it. He's a goner." And that was the only memory I really had.
Yeah, I understand why you would not want to watch this movie.
So it's just really sad.
It is traumatic, and it is like the death of Bambi's mother. Spoiler, but then it gets even worse. This is the really dark part of the film. And I think that's something I want to talk about because I've always wondered about this. This is not like a fan theory or anything. It's just just something I've always kind of wondered if there's just a little bit of subtext there we're not considering. Elliot is getting sick because E.T. is near dead at this point. It's very, very intense. The approaching scientists are basically about to pounce on the house, and the older brother says, "I have to show you something," and he addresses Mom by her name, Mary. And there's a scene earlier in the movie where Gertie refers to, she addresses Mom as Mary. And my question is, are these her biological kids? Are these the kids from the husband's side that he has abandoned? Because
I don't remember that. Well, I don't remember the kids calling her Mary.
Yeah, because the older brother in the beginning of the scene says, "Mary, I have to show you something." And on one hand, it's like, okay, he's like just cutting to it, so I'm calling you by your name because it's something I never do. But Gertie calls her Mary on one occasion too. So I kind of wondered, is Elliot her biological son maybe, and the other two kids are from the husband's side.
I don't know. We should Google that.
Well, to my knowledge, they never tell you what the last name of this family is. So wow. I think it is just a possibility. But anyway, I've always wondered about that. Write in to So I Married a Film Critic if you know the answer to this. Or if you happen to be Steven Spielberg or Dee Wallace-Stone or Henry Thomas or Drew Barrymore or Robert McNaughton. Let us know. So anyway, you have the really, I think, one of the most powerful scenes in the movie where the mother is confronted with this thing that she, has been missing the whole film. And, she literally tears the kids away from E.T. and E.T. is just traumatized and it's horrible. And she goes,
yeah, because E.T.'s just laying on the floor in the bathroom, dying.
Yeah.
And then all the kids have to go away, and then all the scientists just break into her house.
And they're dressed like NASA moon men, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
because no hazmat
It's
suits. They're dressed like astronauts.
ridiculous.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
Yeah. They're not even like, excuse me, we're going to have to turn your house into a
bubble, basically.
hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, so they take over the family house. It's like the ultimate in social distancing. There's just bubbles everywhere, and it's a very long scene of E.T. and Elliot. You know, it's full of techno jargon that they can't be separated because they both have like the same heartbeat. They're both like the same, you know, sort of temperament. And then we meet Keys, finally. We meet Keys, played by Peter Coyote. I love it. The only movie star with the last name Coyote. There's something there. Pretty awesome. And as opposed to him being like this evil mustache-twirling villain, he has this moment with Elliot where he just says, like, I've been to the forest. I've waited for this my whole life.
Yeah, he seems to have had an experience when he was 10 with an E.T.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's this one or a different one because there's lots of them.
Yeah.
But he knows how special it is, I guess.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, there is something very self-serving about this character, obviously. And obviously, he's doing and saying what he's doing because he's, trying to get a hold of the situation. But he goes out of his way to be really human to this little boy who does not.
And I think he's got a thing for Mary.
Which always weirded me out because if Mary goes for this guy, that's so Stockholm syndrome. I'm not cool with that at all, by the way. Just to jump to it, there's a sequel book called E.T. Book of the Green Planet, and it does deal with Keys and Mary, their courtship after this story.
Wow.
I never liked that at all. I don't want those two together.
Come on. You know what?
So how'd you guys met? Well, we took over your house, and
she deserves to be happy, and he is an attractive scientist
who used her to get to the bottom of this, this big alien conspiracy.
Yeah, but he didn't know there was going to be an attractive
that is
single mom.
So two-faced. No, and he's been listening to that family over time. Been driving past her house, like with the little listening device, and. Yeah, no, that's seriously creepy.
Well, all right. Anyway, it's a little creepy.
Yeah. It really is. I love that you want to entertain it. Like, it's kind of a love story. No, it's not. I refuse to let this movie be a love story. So anyway, so E.T. dies. He literally dies. And
I thought that he stayed dead.
Which is good because you're supposed to. I
forgot he.
Well, that's good, Jules. Because that's emotionally where the movie is trying to take you. You're supposed to have that feeling, and the movie does feel like it's wrapping up, like there was a closure in those afterward scenes. Elliot has this scene that always breaks my heart, like a lot of scenes in this film, where he speaks to E.T. for the last time because he feels that he's in a body bag. I mean, it's really traumatizing. The scientists are trying to use the defibrillator to bring E.T. back to life, and there's a moment where Spielberg cuts to Drew Barrymore's reaction shot. That always moves me so much. I don't know what he did to make her cry on cue, but Barrymore is really going there. It's beautiful. It's so sad. But anyway, E.T. comes back to life, and it's
his heart light turns on.
Turn on, yeah, and it's great because Spielberg immediately switches to comedy. Like, not only does he let the audience off the hook, but it's fun. He does this whole thing where Elliot's like, "Shut up."
Oh yeah, because. What does E.T. say?
E.T. oh no.
Yeah.
Because his little heart light is beating, which is kind of like his pager's going off because his crew is like, "We're here for you.
We're coming."
Yeah. So it's pretty. Yeah, it's wonderful, and the movie really speeds to the big climax. There's not like this long. I mean, it's a pretty tight 2 hours, I gotta say. So then this is where. We haven't mentioned before, but there's a BMX biker gang, and as you said, they would be very much at home in the movie Rad.
Yep.
They're led by C. Thomas Howell, and I love the shot where the brother's like, "Meet me at the park" or whatever, and Spielberg does this like sliding pan of like each of the guys like putting on their headphones.
Yeah, they're like, I have been preparing for this day.
Just got real. It's great. It's so awesome.
One of them puts on his sunglasses. The other puts on a full like black mask.
It's great. These
Like
characters,
he's gonna rob a bank.
these characters do not matter, but it's like, but Spielberg gives them their moment to shine, and these actors are like really going for it. It's great. I love it. So then, yeah, so it's like the movie becomes an action film where Elliot's brother, who is not old enough to drive, hijacks the ambulance with E.T. inside. And they make it to the rendezvous point, and there's a lot of shenanigans. What I want to talk about, though, is, and I wondered if you thought of this, because, I mean, it definitely occurred to me when it came out, even. You know, E.T., he's in the back of this stolen van, and he emerges, and he's, you know, covered, you know, there's all this smoke, and he's wearing this white robe, and he has his arms outstretched, and he has this red heart light. It's this very, you know, there's an iconic quality to that moment. You know, the mother, the mother's name is Mary. Mm-hmm. E.T. comes from above, and then he dies, and then comes back to life, and ultimately he goes back to where he came from. I mean, what do you think? Because Spielberg has said this is not a religious film. He did not make a movie, a secular science fiction movie about Jesus Christ. But many of over the years have noted there's something about the imagery in this movie that doesn't feel, you know, it feels, many have said they feel it's very deliberate, the religious imagery that Spielberg has, you know, has taken the greatest story ever told, or certainly the most famous story ever told, and, you know, fused it with science fiction. What do you think?
Yeah, I did not see that when I watched it. So
I didn't think of anything of it. Then I thought, oh yeah, her name is Mary. That's interesting.
yeah, I mean, I didn't make any of those connections, so I don't know. I'd probably have to watch it again with that in mind to really see if there was anything. But no, I really think this is more about a boy, like you said in your article, like learning compassion and empathy and growing up and really learning how to stand up for what you believe in. Because, you know, when he sets the frogs free, when he defends E.T., when he stays out past his curfew, you know, he's doing all of that because he really believes in his friend and he really wants to protect him and save him. And, you know, those are the moments when we're kids and even when we're adults where we have these decisions that we have to make, where it's like, what do I believe in so strongly that I will break norms or tradition or rules or whatever to stand up for those things. And Elliot, this is the time where he's doing that probably for the first time. And so that's more kind of the direction I was thinking, you know.
I did see this once. My dear friend Mike Mitchell, name drop. He was a junior pastor at a church, and he had a screening of this with his flock, so to speak. And it was interesting because he basically turned his church in Lakewood, Colorado, into a makeshift movie theater. He set up this big screen, and it was like at 7:00 at night, so it was nice and dark. And I got to watch this movie in a religious setting, which is something I've never done before, with a bunch of other people. And there is that moment where, you know, Elliot says, you know, only kids can see him, and it made me think of that verse about having faith like a child.
Yeah.
You know. That really jumped out at me. And it is exactly what you said. Like, if you watch it with that mindset, there are things that are a little hard to, like, oh, that feels a little more than a coincidence. I don't think, you know, on the one hand, it's neither here nor there, because I think the movie is fine without that interpretation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, over the years, that interpretation is interesting, I think, because it does kind of check off those points in terms of the narrative, the traditional narrative of.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, when E.T., before he leaves, he says, I'll be right here. Right. And he points to his heart.
Yes.
And I think that could definitely be interpreted as God saying, I'm leaving, but I'm always with you, you know. So you could interpret it like that, yeah, for sure.
Anyway, yeah, we could move on from that, but I thought I'd mention that. I mean, and then it gets to to the final wrap up, which happens very briskly. I mean, they're there at the park, and turns out the spaceship's already there waiting for ET. Like, come on. You know.
And then all the kids get to fly.
Oh yeah, I forgot we skipped over that.
Yeah, which is awesome. And they're like freaking out, and then they land. And
yeah, forgive me. Yeah, because there's the long. Yeah, forgive me. Yeah, there's the long chase with the cops. And the kids think they're cornered, and guns come out, and the kids fly away. And
E.T.'s like, woo!
Yes.
This is rad.
Roger Ebert spoke about how when the film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, he'd never heard an audience cheer so loud during that moment. Because it is one of these things, well, you kind of know that it could be coming, but you're not sure. So then when it does happen, these kids are all flying away. It's a it's a pretty great moment.
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah. So they're all there. The spaceship's about to take off, and E.T. spends a moment to say goodbye to each of them.
I know, and it's so sweet when Elliot E.T. says come, and Elliot says stay, and you're like, oh my gosh, 2 different worlds. We live in 2 different worlds.
It's interesting too. Like I noticed that I'd never thought of it before, but I don't know why that decision was made, but E.T. is given the flowers that prove, the flowers are kind of this visual reminder of what his health is like over the course of the film, and he's given it as a gift, and you see him put the flowers down so that he could say goodbye to everybody. That's interesting to like make it very clear that he intends to hug everybody. But yeah, I love his little party moments with all of them, with Gertie, who is just so like, she's so tearful she can't even get the words out, and then the older brother just wants to touch him before he leaves. Very weird. And Mary and Keys are in the background watching all this happen, which is interesting.
Falling in love. Just kidding.
They're exchanging numbers, this is 1982, so they're just writing it down on a piece of paper. Like, guess we'll have dinner at Roy Rogers after this. After the aliens leave, what are you doing? Elliot has this beautiful goodbye, and then it's a this is a moment where John Williams' music is just it's powerful from top to bottom, but it's really beautiful because you see E.T. going back into the spaceship. He's holding the flowers, and then there's this lovely silhouette, and the spaceship is closing. And at times the music roars, but it also becomes very quiet, and it's just lovely. The spaceship takes off, leaves a rainbow, and the last image you see is of Elliot. The kind of the wind and and the lights kind of leaving the frame. It's lovely. Because it is about this boy overall, how this event changes him. How, as I said in my article, like I love this movie because it's about a boy learning empathy at a very young age, at a time when you're selfish as a young boy, certainly at a time where you're trying to get a grasp on life because there's a parent missing and there's a sadness in your home, and you're an insecure kid who the other kids won't let you play Dungeons and Dragons with them while they're waiting for pizza, and this happens, and he learns truly what compassion is.
Yeah, he learns because he isn't the one being taken care of. He's now having to be a caregiver.
Yeah.
So there is something to be said about giving kids some kind of responsibility at a young age where they understand, like, oh, I'm not the one who always has to get my needs met. I can help meet needs. And I think that he gets that on like a huge scale with an alien.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's impressive how he, I don't know, just how he talks to E.T., how he just like kind of just becomes, they just become like this one like unit, their hearts just become fused together somehow. And I don't know if E.T. does that on purpose, like if E.T. kind of just knows that he's a good person and he decides, like it's like maybe these aliens like pick who they're psychically connected to and he just decides like, oh, you're the one. Or if, maybe that's how it works.
And E.T.'s like, it's either the kid or the dog, so I'm just going to take a shot in this little boy, see if that pans out.
Yeah, but maybe that's how it works. Like maybe it's a survival instinct for the aliens, and he just like knows that Elliot is a good person. overall.
I wonder if like Elliot and Keys do like, afterwards when they all go out to Chuck E. Cheese together, the whole family, little date with Keys. I wonder if he and like Elliot are like, oh, you got drunk too? He did that to me too. Like,
okay, if you could change the ending of this movie, what would your alternate ending be?
I wouldn't change a frame of this movie, but I'll tell you what, Spielberg, a long time later, also, because this movie came out years after Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is like the grown-up version of this movie. And they're two of my favorite Spielberg movies. But anyway, Spielberg kind of stepped away from science fiction for a long time. He came back to science fiction in a very big way in 2005 with the Tom Cruise version of War of the Worlds. And what I would have loved in that movie...
Which movie?
War of the Worlds,
oh.
The 2005 version, because Cruise really doesn't have much of a character. He's basically just this deadbeat dad who has to like take care of his kids. What I was honestly hoping throughout the whole film was that you'd find out that his name is Elliot. And that when we do see the big reveal at the end, when the spaceship opens and you see who the big bad is, that it's E.T. I would have loved that. Because Spielberg was going really dark at this point. The movies that Spielberg made, I mean, it's fascinating. Like not only after Columbine, but after 9/11, Spielberg's films got dark. He became very much a filmmaker. For a while, he was making interesting movies because they were reflecting his own cynicism, his own feeling of darkness and despair at times. So, I mean, after 9/11, I mean, he made AI, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can, Munich, really dark movies. So, you get to War of the Worlds, and there's like no glimmer of hope or whimsy. It's like, it's the anti-E.T. So I would have loved that kind of connection because, I mean, E.T. is arguably the most famous movie ever made about, human contact.
Wow.
So
okay.
I would have liked that kind of, but yeah, because I don't think E.T. Not only do I think E.T. is untouchable, I love that there's no sequel to this film.
Yeah.
And it's an '80s footnote now, which is unfortunate because I think it's better than its reputation. I think people are like, oh, that's such an '80s movie or whatever. No, I do think it's a perfect film.
Yeah, I think people need to revisit it.
I hope they do. And I'll tell you one of, not to drone on too long about this, but I think there's two reasons that the film is not really embraced. Like for example, like the way The Lost Boys or, The Princess Bride is, because in 2002 the film was re-released in a special edition. Do you remember that? It's okay.
No, of course I don't.
Okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if you did or not. E.T., the special edition came out, and this was like a few years removed from the Star Wars special editions, which were huge, where George Lucas went in and added scenes and added special effects, and basically pissed off all his fan base because,
I do remember
all right, you remember that? All right, well then, so in 2002, it's like Spielberg got to do his, and this was, a movie that outgrossed all of the Star Wars movies. I mean, E.T. So he did it in 2002, and the additions he did were highly controversial. And the big one, which is hilarious, was during the final scene where the boys are riding their bikes and suddenly the guys with the guns are pointing the guns at the kids on the bikes. Spielberg was so traumatized, as so many of us were in America after Columbine, he digitally erased the guns and replaced them with walkie-talkies. So the cops are pointing walkie-talkies in a threatening manner at the kids.
Which is so crazy because because we watched the original one.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. I would not show you the special edition of this movie.
And honestly, there's like one rifle pointed at the kids. Like, it's not like there's 25 machine guns pointed at these kids. I mean, I felt like the guns were hardly noticeable. I felt like the police cars were blocking the way, and so that was the more obvious blockade. Yes. It did not seem to me like they were actually going to shoot the kids. Yes. Like that was not even.
Obviously, it was a means of threatening them, stopping them. I agree with you. They were never going to shoot the kids or even the alien. No. But nevertheless, that was one of the controversial additions. They added a scene that was cut out of the film. It's an all right scene. But the thing is, in the special edition, most of E.T. is now CGI. And it's too expressive. It's because, there's a real...
They changed E.T.?
Yeah. It sucks. There's some of it is the puppet, but for the most part, it's like Jar Jar Binks. It's too expressive. It waves its arms around way too much. Like his
fingers are even longer.
Even longer. It just does not gel with what's there. So you got a really wonky character who's just kind of inconsistent from scene to scene.
So note to you guys, watch the original.
Watch the original. So anyway, my point being, when it was re-released in 2002, it was controversial because of the editions and stuff. But also, the special edition came out a year after 9/11. It just strikes me that this movie is just too earnest. In 2002, even, we're too cynical. And these movies, some of these movies that came out during this time, including like Terms of Endearment, they don't hold up well because, stuff that's, the edgy, cynical stuff, that's the stuff that tends to like have longevity.
Maybe that's what's wrong with our world today.
Well, maybe it's too innocent. And maybe it's too easy to make fun of because there's a genuine sweetness to this movie.
Yeah.
Because, other than the fact that there's, the image of a gun, the other thing that Spielberg did, and it wasn't controversial, but it was interesting, was there's that line, a very quick line, where the mother says, "You're not going to be a terrorist for Halloween," and they changed it to hippie. They actually had her go into the recording studio and say, "You're not going to be a hippie for Halloween." But anyway, yeah, so I think the special edition tarnished the legacy of this film. And again, because I just feel like, unfortunately, it becomes a movie that's very much of its time, and it's
I
it's
feel
not
like
fair.
her saying you're not going to be a terrorist for Halloween is very relevant. Like, you should never be a terrorist. You know what I mean? Why would they take that out? Like, it's a good message.
Yeah, but a year after 9/11,
I
it's like
know.
nobody wanted to.
I know, but let's nobody be a terrorist ever.
I mean, let's remember this was the same. This is around the time when they started to digitally erase the Twin Towers out of movies to make audiences feel comfortable, which is something I didn't like that in 2002. I don't like that now. I think that's such a dick thing to do.
I don't like, and this is totally off topic, but it just feels like censorship and just erasing our history. Like, I think we should be able to watch movies in the context that they were originally made, even if they offend our senses. And I think we should be able to talk about that and not just be like, well, I'm offended by this, so no one should ever see this ever again. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. It's like burning books.
You should trust the intelligence of your audience. Trust that they're going to see the Twin Towers and, but they're not going to walk out screaming from the theater because they see a reminder of what things used to be. And it was a mistake for Spielberg to tinker with this, because it's not like the Star Wars special edition. I mean, Star Wars is a movie that's already so special effects heavy. When George Lucas went and added things and took things out, it's hit and miss, but it didn't really mess with the overall flow of the movie. You saw the Star Wars special edition in theaters. It was pretty much like seeing it in 1977. The 2002 E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial is a different movie.
Yeah. Okay, so don't watch that one. Watch the 1982 version.
If you can help it. And really, I mean, it's really easy to spot, because a moment that you mentioned at the very beginning of the film, when E.T. is being chased through the woods by the guys, you see him bouncing like a Mario brother.
In the new one?
Yeah, in the new one. Because, in this version, it just gets the sense of him gliding, but you actually see him like boing, boing, boing through the woods. Yeah, so if you see that,
bad.
You're watching the special edition.
Turn it off.
Turn it off. Never watch it again. Have you been on the E.T. ride at Universal Studios?
Yeah, I love that ride.
Really? You liked it?
Yeah, because you got to go on a bicycle and go like over the moon. I thought it was great.
I just remember being in line for over an hour.
Okay, I was in junior high at the time.
Okay.
So at the time, yes, I thought it was awesome. Would I still? I don't know. But at the time, I thought it was great.
That's interesting. So that's one of your reference points for this movie, because I went on the E.T. ride in 1990, and I just remember it was over an hour to get in, and at the end, E.T. is supposed to say your name before you leave, and they never. It always backfired. It was like, goodbye. And it happened to everybody. It's like, my name is Brad. How can you get that wrong? It happened to everybody. Like, this stupid robot can never get the names wrong.
Goodbye, Vincent, Jaden, Kristen, Sam, Fran, Justin, Jermaine.
That seems like a bad idea for just like any I don't know.
It was. Do you remember? Like, it was a weird thing because like you're in line, you know. And,
I don't remember.
While you're in line, they ask like, okay, what's your name? And it's like Barry, Barry. So they put it in the computer, and they like, you know, they make a note of what bike you're going to be on, so that when last thing, yeah.
You know, like our Google Maps can't even say like the names of our streets. But what do they think? Like back in the 80s and 90s, like a computer could say people's names, names from all over the world. I mean, no, that's a disaster.
And you know, in this you know, this cutesy alien race, goodbye, Harold. Yeah.
Oh man, okay, we are really like devolving.
Do you like this film, or because like when it was over, you're like, I could see why you like it. I'm like, oh, she doesn't really like it.
No, I did like it.
You actually did like it?
Yeah, I did like it. I liked it 100%. I would definitely show it to our daughter when she's a little bit older.
Yes, it's a little much.
It's a little much for her. She's not as mature of a 5-year-old as you were as a 5-year-old.
I didn't have a lot of
she's a little more
parental
sheltered
guidance. Saw a lot of movies I should not have seen by the time I was 5 years old.
Yeah. So we're still on, you know, like Curious George.
Yes.
Over here.
No, we watched Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown today, which is a pretty intense movie.
Lots of peanuts.
Lots of peanuts in this house. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I enjoyed it. I would definitely. I think I'd give it 3.5 stars.
Why 3.5? Why not 4?
I don't know. I don't have a good reason, actually. Just because I knew that you want to give it 4.
Well, it's not that I want to give it 4. I've given it 4. I've been giving it 4 since 1982. Why 3.5? What's something that struck you as off or didn't work? I don't like the frog scene either, but I think it's, you know, I don't think it, you know, brings the movie down.
Yeah. I don't love the part with the scientists when they first, I don't know. I just don't love
the opening scene.
No, not the opening scene. When they invade Mary's house.
Yeah, it's supposed to be very distressing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a good reason.
And it's rude they didn't knock and they just walk in their alien suits.
Yeah, it is rude.
Very inconsiderate.
It's very inconsiderate.
Yeah.
You got me. I don't know.
Just give it 4 stars, Jules.
Oh,
Do it.
Man.
Do it.
Now he's bullying me.
Goodbye, Julia.
You're gonna jump at Universal Studios.
You know what? They got rid of that ride. Aww. Yeah, they got rid. You know why? Because no one remembers E.T. It's our point exactly. No one remembers like, oh, it came out in the 80s. That's an old movie. Oh, sweet. You got the Fast and Furious ride. Oh, that's so boss.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No one says that.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not since 1982.
All right. I'll give it 4 stars.
Yay. I win.
Yeah. Just because you're right. I can't think of anything wrong with it. I really can't.
Neither can I.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
This is a very good episode of So I Married a Film Critic.
All right. Well, that does it for us.
Goodbye, listeners.